You're trapped in a house. It's storming outside. A body in the next room and a collection of nervous suspects gather around a glowing fireplace as the calm and collected detective looks them over one by one. The body count begins to rise as the murderer struggles to keep their secret. What could they be after? What could be important enough to kill for? But how do I fit all this into a tabletop role-playing game? How should I go about writing my own murder mystery for my table? Well, easy. Make your players do it. All right, I know that sounded like clickbait. It was too easy, too impossible, but I actually, for this one, promise you that it's not. Because I've been playing a game that does this for the past 6 months, and it works. So in this video, I will outline a system for you to prep a mystery in just one short afternoon. It's going to reduce the friction on you, and it won't require the incredible amount of precision and time that normally running a mystery does. So this video is angled kind of towards using this system in D&D games, but I mean, honestly, the advice holds for all simulationist games. So the core idea behind this video is based on the amazing Brindlewood Bay, which I mentioned in my Halloween one-shot video last week. And this carved from Brindlewood system, which is kind of what they call the systems that are based on Brindlewood Bay. It's this unique solution to mysteries in tabletop role-playing games. It takes all of the confusing and frustrating guesswork out of this very, very difficult thing, all the while doubling down on what makes tabletop role-playing games great: the collaborative storytelling. Okay, but what am I actually trying to fix with this video? Why am I so hung up on how hard mysteries are to run? Well, for 2 reasons. Firstly, because I'm a little dumb. Hey, I admit it. And more than that, because at the table, I have a lot to manage. If I'm running a game, I'm, 1, trying to handle a list of thematic playlists to get the right music playing. Next, I'm listening to my players, trying to preempt their hopes, their dreams, their fears. Then I'm managing the game system all the time, trying to remember the rules and also adapt them on the fly to fit my players' crazy actions. And at the same time, live teach them to the players who can't remember them no matter what. And at the same time, I am tracking our progress through my prep. I'm making decisions about the time remaining. I'm predicting pacing. I'm trying to fairly shift the spotlight back and forth between my players. I'm trying to have an awareness of lines and veils, and I'm trying to get my story in on top of that, and that's before I start running combat. So running a murder mystery and setting up a clear and cohesive unraveling of clues that leads to this conclusion that was planned and thought out beforehand is a whole lot to add up on top of all of the rest of that. But that leads into the second reason why I feel we need a fix for how mysteries are run in tabletop role-playing games. Mysteries require precision. First off, they require prep to clearly define all of the pieces of the mystery. You need the perp, you need their motive, you need how they did it. Then you need the clues that lead to the conclusion, as well as a few red herrings to throw your players off. Then you need delivery methods for the clues in a way that won't spill the beans immediately. And then I think that mysteries are a little boring without an escalating timeline that pushes the players into action. That's a lot to prep, but then you have to run it and get it right when you run it. And yes, you as the GM can always say, wait, friends, I messed up. But no one likes doing that. I hate doing that. I want to get it right. So executing a mystery requires so much focus and so much attention to detail, as specifically to how information is communicated. And failure can send your players spinning off into confusion in a way that is, I think, a little bit more dangerous and frustrating than most of our normal kind of play. So, how do I propose that we fix this? By reconstructing our expectations and our prep. So let's set this up. Instead of writing a mystery that requires a solution, let's just write the mystery. We'll just pose the question. And then we'll write up a bunch of stuff that will help our players find the answer. And then we'll let our players solve the mystery in whatever way they end up doing and with whatever they find. If that doesn't make sense, I promise it will by the end. You've got to trust me just in the same way that you'll have to trust your players to come up with something very cool. So let's get into how we prep this. First off, we're going to begin with an idea. This is just the cool mystery idea that you have, right? This could be Jack the Ripper, like serial killer. This could be, an alchemist has like a secret lab underneath his normal lab and something got out of it. So basically, whatever cool idea you have for a mystery, you can just drop it in here. And ideally, the mystery isn't just spooky, but also provides some kind of threat to the player, or the things or people that they care about. Also, if you're gonna do something a little typical, like my serial killer idea, try to come up with at least 3 ways that it's different and stands out. That's gonna make your players bite. Maybe the best way to do this is just mash 2 ideas up together. I love doing that. Step 2, we're gonna choose a theme. Now, this isn't actually essential, but it's strongly encouraged because it pulls all of your ideas together, and it does this kind of magic trick where no matter what, as long as you're sticking to and inspired by your theme, all of the crazy ideas that you come up with are gonna feel cohesive at the end of it. Now, the theme, for guidelines for how to create it, should ideally be 1 or 2 words, like dreams or revenge, or maybe tentacles. Maybe tentacle revenge, I don't know. Then we actually get into writing this sucker. Here is where the toughest part of this system is, in my opinion, at least. Because we have to figure out how the 3 phases of the mystery all fit together. Now, first we have presentation, then we have the investigation itself, and then we have the resolution. So I'll talk about each of these, and I will explain how they all need to flow together. And the card from Brindlewood's system calls this the big sync, kind of how it all works together and how it logically flows. So let's start with presentation. Now, this is how we introduce the mystery to the players. Now, Brindlewood games do this in an italicized blurb, but you don't need to do it that way. What you do need to do is give them enough information to get started. Background information about what the mystery is. Clearly structure out how they find out about the mystery, and provide them with a few leads for them to pursue immediately. Now, this part really does require the precision that we were talking about earlier, because by the time you're done with this opening scene, your players need to know exactly what to do in order to start the investigation, and that you need to have not already misled them down a path that you hadn't intended. Let's move on to investigation, because investigation is the core of solving a mystery, right? It's answering questions that no one knows the solution to. Now, in order to focus your players' attention, I recommend that you clearly pose a question for your players. Now, the question has to logically follow your presentation. Now, making your questions is going to clarify what your presentation needs to be. So, don't feel like any of it's locked in just yet. You're going to be building all these things together. Certain elements of this mystery will have to be given to your players in the presentation. So we're writing this question, and if you want, your first question can lead to a second question. But in the end, they will all lead towards this, an opportunity. Each question will unlock, as it were, an opportunity to allow your players to resolve the mystery. We'll talk about resolving the mystery in the resolution part. More on that soon. Now, making this logical order is, for me, the most difficult part of this prep. Let's say that we have a ghostly murder mystery on our hands, right? You could either have the first question be, which ghost committed the murder? Okay, that makes it clear that this place is indeed haunted, and now we know that there are multiple ghosts, and that goes back to your presentation. You have to have told them about the multiple different ghosts in your presentation, or made them aware that there are multiple different ghosts, so that they don't spin off in another direction and start to mess with the rest of your prep. But maybe let's go back and say that you don't like that, and instead you want to go even further back in like the logical following of investigation. You want to make your first question, is the haunting of the mansion real? Now your players have to figure out if there actually is a ghost. And there's also a branching path that you've kind of implied here. It's a little bit more difficult to prep, but it's totally doable. If they indeed do discover, decide, figure out from their use of the clues that there is a ghost, now you have some options for your next question. Why did the ghost kill the victim? Or how do we put the ghost to rest so it will never kill again? Alternatively, if the ghost is fake, you could ask, who is faking the ghost and why? How do we answer these questions though? Basically by using clues that you pick up, but we're gonna get to that in just a little bit in step 3, running it together. Now, as I said before, these questions lead inevitably towards opportunities which allow your players to achieve resolution. Now, the questions that your players answer during their investigation will invariably lead here to a way for the players to wrap up the mystery in a climactic resolution. Now, for example, we could have the question, how do we put the ghost to rest and never kill again? Clearly, that leads to an opportunity to wrap up this mystery. It might be that you could have a couple of different ways to resolve the mystery, right? For example, a killer could be captured, could be killed, or they could be driven away. Now, the trick with this is to let your questions guide you. Don't try to manipulate it. Let the mystery take you where it needs to go and then leave it open enough so that your players can create a real climax that they think is the coolest. Okay, so we've got step 1 done. We've set it up. Now let's slide into step 2, which is going to be fleshing it out. We've got the core structure of the mystery, but we need to flesh it out with content. Now, this includes some stuff for you to run with that's not just the core arc of this mystery. Now we're going to build the stuff that's actually going to fill out the game and that your players are going to play with in order to solve the mystery. So this includes a couple of things. We've got the baddie, we've got moments, we've got threats, locations, side characters, and most importantly, maybe, we've got clues. So let's go through these one by one. The baddie. The nasty at the center of the mystery could be a killer, could be a vampire, could be an oblex, whatever serves your purposes. This should be the only thing that you need to stat block out, so get that ready. I also like to write a sentence in their voice and 3 little descriptive blurbs that I imagine about this baddie. These just kind of save me from thinking too much in game and give me something to grab onto if I'm having trouble with inspiration. You're gonna see that come up over and over and over again in the rest of this. 3 blurbs will save your life at the table. Next up, threats. So I'd say 2 to 4 things that can mess up your players that should be kind of connected to the baddie itself, but they're not it exactly. These might be traps, they might be characters, they could be other monsters. Don't feel like you have to list out everything, just the stuff that you want to grab onto and play with and that's inspiring to you, or that you think your players are definitely going to stumble onto and will think is awesome. Then locations, between 4 and 6 places that you think might fit into the investigation. Your questions, your prep from earlier might have already started to flesh these out for you. They might be really obvious, right? So our haunting of a mansion mystery would include all the rooms in the mansion. Duh. Now, a slightly more broad mystery might be a little harder to pin down, in which case, I'd say let your theme guide you, or just honestly whatever is inspiring you. Now, when writing locations, I would avoid getting too detailed, right? This is not a dungeon map. These are like theater sets. You're just placing them there and giving them a couple things to play with. I would write a short description, you guessed it, 3 details or moments of the place, and I have really become attached to doing a paint the scene question. I love these. A paint the scene question is a leading question that you pose to your players to help you all collectively flush out the location. Now, paint the scene questions, it sounds really simple, right? But it's actually kind of tough when you're writing them. My advice is to focus on the idea. Don't just ask for set dressing and avoid questions that will reveal stuff that is important to the investigation. Paint the scene questions thrive when they help further flesh out your theme, helping players explore places not only aesthetically, but also thematically. Do I have a great example? So let's say that our theme is loss, and we're making a paint the scene question for the smoking room in our haunted mansion. You could have a paint the scene question be, what about the decor in this room tells you that it has seen generations of owners? Or describe elements of the room that don't quite fit with each other because they were added by different owners of the mansion. Or maybe describe the different small objects in the room that are memorials to lost family members. Now you can see how that's going to start your players' brains starting to go in new directions and get them thinking about the story in an interesting way, and also connect them to the theme. Done with the locations, let's go on to side characters. Now, mysteries can be really character heavy, so I would prep between 4 and 10 side characters. You don't have to use them all, but having them there can be super helpful. Give each character a name, a short blurb, a short blurb on how they connect to the mystery, and then give 3 descriptive details like with locations and everything else. I like to write a little bit about their motivations, and I like to scribble up a quote that they say, just like with the baddie. It kind of really helps me get back into whatever voice or cadence I had dreamed up for them. That's an old trick from doing accent work in acting school. Finally, we have clues, which are arguably the most important, but also the most scattershot part of this process. Make 20 clues. I like 20 because I like 20-sided die, so I can roll. Right? If I don't know what to give them, I can roll them something. I mean, yeah, that is a lot, but you want a great variety to pick from. Keep them 1 sentence long, and unlike a traditional mystery, they aren't tied to any one person or place. They can be found at any location, and they can be found near any side character or threat, so you need to write them to be super flexible. Now, this is tough because the devil and the horror is in the details. But you need to keep them general in relation to people and places. So keep a couple things in mind when writing these. Don't preconceive a theory about how your players are going to answer the questions. They don't have to make sense. The players will make sense of them. That's what our brains do. We are wired to make sense of things that don't make sense. Try to make sure that no one clue answers any of your mystery's questions. That makes it way too deterministic, and it undermines the exercise. Finally, include a lot of different types of clues. And by this, I mean that there are a bunch of different ways that information can be passed. And a clue could be any one of them. It could be an object, it could be a document, a rumor, even like supernatural weirdness. It could be a strange smell, or it could be the phase of the moon, literally. Don't limit yourself. I'd recommend scribbling just a thought stream of ideas and then like editing down ones that infringe on other parts of the process or don't fit the guidelines that I gave you above. Do that a couple times until you have 20 that you're at least okay with. Remember, you're probably not going to give out all 20, so just get close. And some of your best clues aren't going to be the ones that you like. But also, your best clues will be things that stick out. Normal things in a normal place aren't actually a clue, they're boring. Normal things in an abnormal place, or normal things altered strangely, are good clues. Let me say this again, don't match up clues with questions, it's not necessary. Your players will come up with crazy cool ideas to answer questions with the clues that you give them, and that is where the fun comes in. You have to trust that process. And last of all, I didn't mention this earlier, but you should write some rewards. I'd write a reward for every player in your party. That could be monetary, they could be like an object or an item, it could be a magical boon or otherwise, or maybe it's a story reward where they get more information or they get the resources to tackle a project that they've been thinking about. Now, I'd write these resources to be linked specifically to the mystery and followed like a kind of logic. I might also, if I was running a mystery in a campaign, write like a little blurb about what will happen if the players piss away their time in the tavern and don't solve the mystery. Something will get worse, and it will come back to bite them. And that's it. Now you have a fully written toy box of a mystery, complete with everything you should need to run this crazy thing. But how do I run it, Miles? Well, I got you. You've given yourself a blueprint. But as I pointed out earlier, we don't have like a system for answering these questions. So let's talk about this system. So the CFB, carved from Brindlewood games, are heavily influenced by Powered by the Apocalypse. So Brindlewood and its many sisters, you have like a theorizing or an analogous move where your characters stop and they make a theory based on the clues that they have collected. They then take 2d6, they have 2d6 around here somewhere, 2d6, and they roll them looking for a 7 or up. And they add +1 to their roll for every additional clue that they use to support their theory. If the result is 6 or below, they are wrong, and the GM gets to react back, making their life miserable. Now, you could literally take this system, and when your players take a short rest or whatever non-D&D equivalent of time you have in your game, they could take a shot at answering a question. That would work fine. In addition, just so you're aware, if the result on the D6 plus the clues is below a 10, the GM adds some kind of complication to make the next step of the investigation or the resolution more difficult. But if it's a 12 and up, the mastermind or the BBEG of the campaign shows up while they are resolving it. So that gives more drama and a greater opportunity in that system to collect crucial mastermind clues, which they use in the end to win the campaign. I think that's so cool. I think that's super useful, but alternatively, you could make your own mechanic for solving them with the dice, right? It could be a D20. If you're playing D&D, that could be really fun. But honestly, if this is a one-shot, just make whatever crazy theory they come up with be right. Maybe require them to use a certain amount of clues before they theorize so that the game plays for a while. But in general, I think you're going to have more fun if they're correct. And then they get to pursue resolving the mystery colored with whatever insane player brain solution they came up with. And beyond that, you should play the investigation out like a normal game. But when you think they do a cool thing, or they look in an interesting place, or they roll well, throw them a clue that makes sense. Use all the stuff that we came up with in step 2 to help run a fairly improvised investigation. And when in doubt, go back to your theme. They will start coming up with theories at the table very quickly, but keep them from like officially theorizing and spending time doing that until they have a few clues. Try to force them to have some fun investigating. Beyond that, you should play it by ear. Have fun. Use the cool prep that you made and see where your players and the story takes you. That's it. I can't believe that it's that short. Like, I wrote this video and I thought about it so hard, and I can't believe that it is that little work. I also, check this out, wrote one. I did one for you guys, and it's up on my Patreon right now. If you're watching this the week of the video, you'll have to pledge $1 to get access to the early access Saturday something. And if you're watching it a little later, then you won't have to do that. It'll be free on the Patreon at patreon.com/milesawaygames. I really appreciate my patrons and all of you, so please like, subscribe, and if you enjoyed this, if you think this is crazy, if you think this is awesome, if you've done something like this for years, or if you play Brindlewood Bay or its many sisters, please comment down below with your favorite emoji or a thought. It really does help other people just like you see this video, which just means more conversations about games. And that's always a good thing. All right, thanks for hanging out, everyone. Stay miles away from boredom, and I'll see you next time.